All right, we're back, and it is COMP125. It's week 2, lesson 2, part 4 of the summer 2016 semester of our broadcast. We just finished talking about shoring up everything from last week. So the first PowerPoint is done. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand again. To take away from today, all right, for next week is because we only have one class next week, which is the Wednesday, because of course I forgot about the long weekend, right? Remember that that when we talk about first paragraph here, this way of doing a named function, I want you to remember to do it this way. Also remember that we can't execute this function by itself. It doesn't self-execute like this one up here, right? This one needs to be called like this, right to first paragraph. Okay, that's the one thing to know. Now there's other ways to do this, by the way, but I'm only showing you the stuff that we've learned so far, right? So I'm not trying to skip ahead and show you other ways. In JavaScript, as in any other code that exists out there, there are a multitudinous ways, groups of ways to do the same thing. I'm not saying that any one way is better than another, but there's always many, many ways to do the same thing in programming. Okay, there's just not one way. I'm not going to tell you, this is the only way that you can do this. No, 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 no. There's many ways to do the same thing, and which presents a problem for students when they're first learning, because you look online and you see stuff that says do it this way, A, and then I say B, and there's another one that says C, and there's a third one that says D, and they're all the same, and they're all right actually, but they're right for that specific problem that you're trying to solve. Remember, when we write any kind of code, we're solving a problem. We need to create functionality for a website. That's the problem. We want to solve that problem, so we create a graphic user interface so we can create functionality, right? And we use JavaScript to wire it all up. Right? That's our solution. So there's many different ways to solve the same problem. Okay, this one is all around functions, the second one, and I covered some of the function stuff already, but there's two types, like I said. There's a named function, take that away, and then there's an anonymous function. Look what it says, use named functions when you want to reuse code, use anonymous functions when you want to have code that only runs once, okay? We've actually made an anonymous function with an alias, so we can call it just like we did the name function. We just assigned a variable name to it. That was the other way. Okay, and it gives you examples here of anonymous functions like this. Hey, here's something. I can never execute this anonymous function. Eh? I can write it, but I can never execute it. Why? I can't call it with anything. There's nothing to call this function with, so I can't really execute this function if I write it this way. If I just write the function and the parameters, it'll take it, but I can't do anything with it. It'll never be used, ever. Right? So why would I ever write it that way? Well, there's reasons. We'll talk about that later on. I don't want to confuse you right now. Here's something, parameters. There's like any methods we learned in C#, they're the same. You can put in a number of parameters. The difference is in here, in JavaScript, we don't declare types, right? So we don't say integer, string, or whatever. So please use parameter names like that make sense. And that's what we call contextual variable names. There has to be some context around them. Don't give me X, Y, and Z when you mean length, width, and height. You don't really mean X, Y, and Z, right? So use that length, width, and height. That makes more sense, right? So I will be marking you on that when we do assignments. So if you notice inside your assignment, it says please use contextual variable names for internal documentation purposes. So here's an example of a named function. Oops, let's go back. A named function, length, width, and height, and it is a little bit of calculation. Length times width times height is equal to volume. And oh my God, we're doing a document.write of volume, right? Document.write, really bad. You should know about it. If you see it, if someone uses document.write, you see them using document.write, right? Give them the father hand, right? Just never use it, not in real world. That's only used for debugging and very infrequently, right? Again, a function call, when we call the function, we can declare a function, but we need to call the function. And we need to call it by its name. And we can invoke it. That's what it's really called, invoking the function. That's why the IFI is called an immediately invoked, immediately called function expression, because we invoke it or call it right away, right? And we need to use the name of the function to call it. If it doesn't have a name, anonymous function, and there's no name attached to it, we can never call it, which means it just sits there taking up space in our code, right? So again, what you asked me, why would you use an anonymous function? A lot of times we use it for event handling. Okay, I'll put it out there to you. Okay, we can pass arguments to functions like we know in other languages. Remember, because JavaScript is a C-influenced language, you already know about passing data to functions and all that kind of stuff because you know C#. If you've never done programming before, then you'd be like, okay, I would have to teach you functions from the very beginning. But the stuff about passing data into functions through parameters, you should already understand. Nothing new. Okay. This is where we get into some funky stuff when we start talking about events, okay? And in the book that they have here, which I think, to me, is a little out of order. I would never teach you events at this stage, but they do it in the book. And there's two ways to create events, in JavaScript, okay? Two main ways, actually. I should say there's more than two ways, but the two main ways you're going to see are the following. You can use the onClick method, right? Document.getElement by ID, onClick, then call the show message function, right? Which is kind of weird, right? And you can do it inline, inside your code. Your input or some kind of HTML element, and then you do an onClick message, and then you do the you call the show message function. There's two. And the third one, which I like using better, right, is add event listener, right? Let's go over these three methods for event listeners, okay? We'll talk about it today. I think I'm going to stop here for talking about anything new. This is enough. Once I start talking about event handling, it's enough to make your head spin, okay? So I don't want to go too fast here because next week, we only have a short week and I don't have a lot of time to talk about things. So let's go through this. So I've got this little silly function right here that write to first paragraph. We can write stuff. And we can write a lot of things to first paragraph. I can make my my variable name, instead of it's printing it's alive, I can make this, actually pass in a variable name. Like for example, I can inside my iffy, I can have a variable called, my first paragraph, right? I can do this, and I can make it equal to a first paragraph worth of text. Like this is my first paragraph. I am writing this for demonstration purposes. You can make it as long as you want. You can even add spaces as long as it has a semicolon. It'll keep going. But the problem is, notice that unless I type stuff in here, or if you notice that the semicolon goes here, but I'm still getting this error, right? It says unterminated string literal, because, right, it's pretty darn long. So if you want to write a really long paragraph like this, you could write it on one line, or you could break it up. You could say, this is the first part. You can add a plus, go to the next line and continue it. This is the second line. This is the second sentence, or third sentence of my first paragraph, whatever. And keep writing, right? Notice all I've done is I've stitched two string literals together. One here with a plus. Plus is an operator that can take two strings and smash them together. Make sure you have a space after that because it doesn't add extra spaces, right? So I've got my first paragraph, and my first paragraph variable, because it's written in this iffy scope, the main programming scope, I can pass it into, instead of where it says it's alive, I can pass in my first paragraph. I can do that. And when I save it and I go back to Chrome, oops. Let's open this in Finder and show you what I'm talking about. Now it's going to say, this is my first paragraph. I'm writing this for demonstration purposes. Oh, I forgot a period. Hold on. Period, right? And it's also highlighted by this, funky outline here. This is the third sentence of my first paragraph, right? You can see that. And it's going to keep writing over and over again. And so I can inject as much data as I want. Just be careful how it's coded here in your document, right? Notice how I've broken it up between two lines like this, okay? So you guys can see. What they're talking about in the PowerPoint presentation is something called events. And I want you to think about events like something that's going on your page. Your page is a static page right now. But I want you to think of it this way. If I click on a button, or if I click on an element that's in the page, it raises something called an event, the click event, okay? If I can create the event, but then I have to handle the event. Now, mostly, like we said before, events are ignored. I can create something called an event listener. The event listener will point to an event handler. So there's two parts of making events happen, right? The listener, I'm listening for an event to be raised, right? An event is triggered by different things I do with my keyboard and mouse, all right? I can trigger events. Even when I'm talking to the computer, I can trigger events, right? Then I have to be able to handle the events. It's almost like I'm throwing the ball and I'm catching the ball, right? When I trigger an event, see down there? I'm throwing you the ball, catch the ball, right? See, you caught the ball, you got the ball down there, right? I threw you the event, you caught it. When I'm throwing you the event, it's my event listener that's triggering. You're the event handler, right? Catching the ball. If I don't have an event handler, the event is ignored. Let's make an event listener and an event handler. First of all, we can code the event in a couple of different ways. The first way is inline here. And this is where it becomes crazy. Let's like, when I click on the paragraph, I want it to change colors, right? This is the thing I want to show you, right? So how do I do that? I can use something called inline event handling, on click. If I start typing on click inside my HTML document, I can point to a function, right? That's going to handle my event handler, right? So, and I'll call it first paragraph clicked. That's going to be my function name, right? So when I on click, I want you to execute first paragraph clicked. Do I have first paragraph clicked written in my app.js right now? No, which means if I run this thing now the way it is, let's just run it the way it is and see what happens. Refresh, and I click on this thing here. So let me show you the console for a second. It doesn't look like I can click on it because it just looks like a paragraph, but actually, if I click on the paragraph, you can see that I'm getting errors because there is no function like that. I can use events to handle anything I want, hovers, clicks, all over the page. Even though it's not a button, I can treat my paragraph like a button. This is JavaScript, the power of JavaScript, and the ugly part of JavaScript too, because it can be confusing. Okay, cool. So I need to write a new function called first paragraph clicked, right? Because that's what I called it. And I can do that anywhere inside my IFE. Let's do it before all this commented code and below my right to first paragraph, all right? So I'll say function, first paragraph, that's spelled right, clicked, right? And what does this function do? It's going to change the color of my text to red, right? How do I do that? Well, do I have access to my document, my first paragraph? No. That means I can do two things. I can declare this thing again, right? Or I can declare this in the global scope, or in the, sorry, not the global scope, in the functional scope here, and then I can access it. So let's say I do this. Take this piece here out of my right to first paragraph, cut it, and put it here, right, way at the top, right? First p tag, right, is way out here. Now, first p tag is available to me down here, right? So I can do something like this. First p tag dot, right? And if I type something like CSS, you know, or something like, you know, I want to change the style. So I can do style dot, right? When I start typing style, I can change what? The color, right, is equal to red. Okay. So what am I doing here? Style, color. If I hover over, it tells you first paragraph is an HTML element. Style is a CSS style declaration. Color is the CSS style declaration attribute, right? And red is the value. I could also do it like this. Instead of red, I can use hexadecimal values. So FF0000, right? That's equivalent to red, right? I can do it that way too, just like CSS. But I'm using this syntax to do that. The reason why I can access first paragraph at all inside my function is because I moved the declaration of first p tag from inside of my right to first paragraph, which was a closed scope. I didn't have access to it in there, to up here inside the functional scope of my immediately executed, immediately invoked function expression, my IFE. Now that it's up here, I can access it inside my code. Still not available in global scope, but it's inside my castle, right? It's not in the wasteland, right? I'm still okay. Let's try this out. So when I click on it, the color changes to red. All right, let's see if it works. So refresh, click on it, the color changes to red. Oh man, what happened? It says uncaught reference error. First paragraph clicked is not defined. Did I not mention it correctly? First paragraph clicked. I gotta make sure it's exactly right. First paragraph clicked. Did I save it? It looks right. Let us, just for the moment, let me just refresh my page. Right? Sometimes what happens is the cache is all messed up too, right? And that's why it gives me this little error, right? And then the thing to check to see if it's gone through is if you go to sources, and if I click on scripts, and if I look here, and if I don't see first paragraph, you see first paragraph clicked here, it is here, right? But I gotta make sure this first paragraph clicked is exactly the same, this function is exactly the same, it's written exactly the same as when I'm calling it in my index.html. First paragraph clicked, right? And see how it says uncaught reference error, first paragraph clicked is not defined. Here's something. How come it's not defined? I defined it, and this is where that's what I wanted to get to. This is where event handling becomes tricky, right? All event handling, and this is the answer to this question, all event handling is asynchronous. Asynchronous. Okay, I don't want you to blow your brains out when I say this now, all right? What I mean by asynchronous is it doesn't wait. This thing, because the page executes in order, right? It reads the page like this. As the page loads, it loads all the way to the bottom, right? Now, because I've written my first paragraph clicked, this function, and I've created an event handler that's in here on click, right? It's reading the document in order, right? It's reading this on click event before I get to my scripts page. You see? Can't be after, right? I don't want to write it that way. And this is where this on-click event stuff gets a little bit tricky. I could declare my script. If I was to move my script from here into my head, this would work, right? But I don't want this to, this is a messed up way of doing it. So if I was to do that, let me show you this. If I take my script tag, I cut it, and I put it inside my head of my document like this. Remember I told you not to do this. This is bad, right? This is why I don't use on-click, by the way. I don't never use on-click events like this because it's inline, okay? And if I save it, and if I run it again, so if I go back to here and I refresh my page, do you see that the error goes away? Yeah. So now when I click, oh, what happened? Well, now I have another problem, right? The paragraph is after it gets declared, it doesn't exist yet when I ran my script, right? Which is a problem. So how do I manage that? And there's some stuff to do that I can tell you how to fix that too. So if I really want to fix it, I could wait for the window to load before I run my script, right? I could do that. But that presents to be a problem as well, right? So what I'm asking you to do is, going forward, unless you absolutely have to, unless there's an external library that we're using, don't use on-click or on-hover or whatever, the on, and name the event, whatever it is, inside your HTML tags. Let me show you this. So don't do this. This works, limited use, but it can mess you up, okay? So if I click on this, it'll give me some stuff. If I wrote some default paragraph information, here's some default, look, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Default paragraph stuff, right? If I do this, and I ran it the way it is with the script tag in the head, if I was to do this and refresh, you can see that I get my default paragraph stuff. And if I click onto it, right, then it raises an error. It says, hey, I can keep raising this over and over again. It still says, uncut reference error, first paragraph clicked is not defined, right? So I got a problem with that one. Okay, and it says text content of null. The reason why this isn't working here is because I have an error here. If I have one error in my code, the rest of the code doesn't function. Okay, I'm telling you, this is how JavaScript works. Okay, so let's fix it. The way we're going to fix it is to put it all back. So we're going to go blah, put it all back down here, get rid of this, right? And instead of this way, this is my preferred method for you guys to learn, okay? Which is the third method in the book, right? Don't write the event handler on your index.html, write it here. So when we declare our first p tag, write the event handler right away, right? And there's two ways to do it. I could do something like this. First p tag add event listener is my preferred method, right? Then it asks you for what type of event, the click event. Instead of on click or on hover, get rid of the on whenever you do events, okay? And then just type the named event, click, hover, mouse over, mouse out. Those are the events that you're going to use a lot, okay? And then the name of the function that you're going to handle the event with, and just the name. Don't execute the function. So it's going to be first paragraph clicked like this. First paragraph clicked. This is the event listener. Event listener. And we're adding the event listener to the first paragraph tag, the first p tag. We're adding it on. When we say add event listener, we're taking this first paragraph clicked event, which is going to be running asynchronous. This is the event handler. We're going to talk about events a little bit more. Don't worry, it's not the first and last time, okay? Does it make sense what I'm saying? So one of it, I have to add the event listener when I declare my first paragraph tag. When I declare a reference to my paragraph tag, I declare also the event listener. That way, it's part of my paragraph tag. They're almost linked together, right? And now, when I run this, if I refresh the screen, notice I get no errors. If I click on this thing now, it turns red. It does the behavior that I want. It performs that behavior, right? When I hover on this, okay? Now let's go back to your book to see what it says. So this is the thing I'm telling you not to do. Don't do this. This is bad, right? This works, but only limited use. You have to play around with this. There's other on-click events and on-load event you can use. Like for example, if you put an on-load event and you attach the on-load event as an attribute to the body tag, you can wait for the body to load before you run your event, right? Be careful. If the whole body has to load, then you can run the event. You know, that's limited. And this, I don't want to use the on-click event of my get element by ID. That doesn't make any sense either, right? Because I'm chaining events. Look, this is called event or method chaining. I'm going document dot get element by ID, whatever dot on click is equal to, and then show and whatever the event is, the handler. This is, my friends, is the preferred method right here. So please, whenever you write events of any kind to handle any clicks, hovers, whatever you're going to do on the page for UI manipulation, you always do events like this. Okay, it's the best way. I have to say, it's my best way. It's not the only way. Okay, let's do one more thing before you go. Wait with me one more second. I swear I'll let you go. I swear. Right? Okay. Well, we've clicked on it one time, right? But if it's already clicked, but what if I want to click on it and I want to toggle it? So every time I click it, it goes back the other way, right? Well, I need to have another variable to say that the first paragraph was clicked, right? So let's do that. So we'll say another variable. I'll declare in the scope. You know, first paragraph is clicked, another variable, right? And I'm going to make it equal to false. What kind of variable is this? Because I made it false. Boolean, right? If you hover over, it tells you. It's a Boolean. Whatever I assign, the variable transforms, it becomes that, right? If it walks like a duck and sounds like a duck, it's a duck. Duck typing, right? It becomes what I assign it. Okay, so now it's a Boolean. First paragraph is clicked, right? So because it's false, it starts off as false, right? And I'm going to say this: if here's my if statement. So now we're doing conditionals. If first paragraph is clicked. First paragraph is clicked. I'm making it intentionally bad like this. If it's true, right? If first paragraph is true, then we don't want to make it red, right? We want to make it black again, right? So we want to make it like this. Notice that I'm not saying is equal to. I'm not going is equal to true. You could, but you don't need to do that. Because if I just do like any C# rules, if I go first paragraph is clicked, it means that if it's true, right? If it's true, we want to say first p tag, right? Dot style dot color, right, is equal to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, or black, right? And else, if it's not clicked, then make it red. Every time you click on the event, it raises this event handler to happen, right? It calls the event handler first paragraph clicked, right? And depending on if you've clicked on it before, it changes it. But here's something: if we've clicked on it one time, this one, we have to set our first paragraph is clicked, right, to true, right? Because we clicked on it. And then if it's true, right, it's going to go here, and then we have to set if first paragraph is clicked to false in here, right? That way we can toggle it on and off. The flag first paragraph is clicked is going to change every time I click on it. A little bit confusing if you've never seen it before, if you've never done it before, but actually it's quite, it makes sense. So if I click on my first, if I've ever clicked on my first paragraph, right, if it's true, then when I click on it again, it'll go black, right? If I've never clicked on my first paragraph, then it'll be red, and I will set the flag that I've clicked on it to true so I can remember. So when I come back in here again and I click on it again, I can change the color back and forth from black to red to black to red every time I click on it, okay? Let's check this out and see if it works. Refresh. So if I click onto this, red, click on it again, black, click on it again, red, and I keep clicking on it, and depending on when I click on it, it'll keep changing. Okay, one more, I swear, I'll go away, I swear. When I hover over it, right, it'll become green, right? If I hover out, it'll go back to black. Same code, but now it's a different kind of event. Let's write it. I'll just copy it so you can see this. So it's going to be like this one, this event handler for paragraph, first paragraph clicked, clicked, right? And now we'll write the same event handler, but it'll be just for a paragraph hover. Oh, you're going to ask me, but it's code duplication, Tom. This is bad on hover, right? And instead of first paragraph clicked, we're going to call this first paragraph hover, right? Hover. And instead of having our first paragraph is clicked, first paragraph was hovered over, right? Was hovered. Watch this. This is silly. But the idea, I want you to get the idea by banging it into your head a little bit. Was hovered. Making it up, okay, guys? Was hovered. Let me just take this thing for a second really quickly, copy it over here so you can see what I'm talking about, right? So that's the one thing that's going to happen. And now when I hover over it, if it's never been hovered, if it was hovered, I want to make it black. If it's never hovered, I want to make it green. So I want to make it 00 RGB, right? Green is 2 Fs. Oops. If I hover over it, first p tag, my first paragraph was hovered is true, then I make it green, otherwise it's black, okay? So first paragraph hovered. But I need to make the event handler now. Let's do that. So here's my event handler for my click. Let's make the event handler for, or event listener for hover. Event listener for hover, and this is event listener for click. Click. Right? Let's do that. There's two different events I'm raising. First, p tag dot add event listener, and instead of click, I want to put hover. And I'm going to put it's going to be first paragraph was hovered is the one that I'm going to access. Notice that I don't put the opening and closing braces over here. I'm just pointing to which event handler is going to handle my event listener. Okay? Don't worry, this is not the first time or last time we're going to talk about events. All right? I'm introducing them today. It's scary that they're telling you these things in chapter 2 in the book, but it is what it is. Let's go back and try this out. Refresh. Hover. Oh man, hover. How come it's not hovering? Because it's not called hover. It's called on mouse over or mouse over and mouse out. And I've got two different events for that. Let's try this out for the first time, right? So if instead of hover, it's mouse over. Right? Let's try this out. Save, refresh, hover, right? And it's still not working. I can do this, but I still can't change it to green. How come? Well, it's not raising the event, right? As I'm hovering over, I'm not getting that hover event, right? Mouse over, mouse out. And the problem is that the paragraph tag is so small, sometimes that's a problem, right? Mouse over or mouse out. Mouse over event. First paragraph was hovered. Oh, that's why. It's the wrong thing, right? I'm calling the wrong thing. It has to be first paragraph hover, right? So this is the problem with my naming. I've done it on purpose for you guys to see how crazy it can be, right? Okay, go. Refresh. Hover, right? Hover back. Click. Click again. Hover over. Hover back. Click, right? So you can do that. So you have a lot of control, right, with events. I'm just warning you. I want you to be careful because this kind of stuff can be really tricky and really ugly. And I've made it so it's like, if you understand this stuff, all the power to you, right? Event handling is very challenging. We're going to cover it again. Please, if you can come away with 2 things from today, 2 types of functions: anonymous functions that you can point to with an alias. Events, please write them this way with add event listener. That's page 10 of your PowerPoint presentation for PowerPoint number 2 for this week, okay? Otherwise, guys, we'll come back next week on Wednesday, and I'll give you a little lab. Let's do on Friday. Have a great long weekend. Some of you I'll see on Friday.